Everybody, welcome to our webinar this afternoon on elevating construction and remodeling excellence. We are trying something very different here at Plantar today, and we've brought in an expert from the field, and I'll introduce our guest in a second. Normally, our formats have been very kind of master class, very technical related on product development, different ways of using the product. But based on the success of several of our customers in the last year, as we've rolled out some new products in the AEC space, we thought it would be very valuable in bringing in some experts that have taken those things and really changed their business. So this afternoon, we're really happy to be joined by Joe Levitch from Levco Builders, a true industry expert, an expert in the remodeling industry, an instructor, a certified instructor in the remodeling industry, a business owner, and everything in between, including being a master tradesman. So again, thank you, Joe, for taking time out of your life, your business to join us this afternoon and share your experiences in this space. And we look forward to hearing from you. So do you mind just taking a kind of minute or two and introduce yourself, a quick background into yourself and your company?
Sure. My name's Joe Levitch, and my father was a contractor and architect, and I grew up in his shadow working on the jobs as a kid, and pretty much picked it up, the love for remodeling then. My dad and I clashed, and I headed in a different direction and went into EMS. And I was a paramedic for very many years and a restaurateur. And then at the end of my restaurant experience, I decided to open a remodeling company. And it was based upon, I was remodeling houses in my neighborhood, and I was approached by a neighbor who asked me to remodel his house. And I had to become a business at that time, a legitimate business. And I asked my dad to borrow the company name. And I did that because he didn't use it any longer. He had changed names. And so kind of out of respect for him, I created Levco Builders in 2005. And I've been remodeling ever since. I'm full-time remodeling for the last 9 years. I was part-time still doing EMS until I could get my company to where it was self-sufficient. So at this point, my company actually has been around for 18 years, sorry. I teach through NARI, and I try to stay abreast of what's all going on. I was a member of Remodelers Advantage for quite a while, and I feel like I've created a good, strong, solid company that has consistent results. And I've been very pleasantly surprised and pleased with my relationship with Plantar and my iGuides have really done a wonderful thing. And so I'm happy to share that story with you guys.
So Joe, a lot of our background has come from residential real estate where our tech got started. And if there's anybody on the call today that is not familiar with construction remodeling, could you maybe just spend a minute on kind of quantifying and what is that space?
Sure. I'm a design build company. And so I was using architects or draftsmen to do I wasn't really architect fed that much. And so I would have to, if a client got into design, I would have to find an architect or draftsman to do as-built drawings in the design process. And then it was repeated back and forth with the designer to basically slug through the process of getting drawings done for a client. And that was an arduous task. And I couldn't seem to figure out how to eliminate that constraint. And so we take existing houses, draw as-built plans, and then come up with the program for the client that solves their problem. And there could be 2 or 3 iterations of the proposed plan until we get something they like. And if any of you are in my same shoes, you'll know that that takes forever if you are depending on third party to help you solve that problem. And so that's where I was in the process of trying to solve a constraint.
So Joe, you mentioned about you've been remodeling for a long time, and I'll just play that back. So when a homeowner wants to remodel their house, there's obviously scale there between small projects and big projects. In the state that you're in the country that you're in, where is that line of knowing if you need drawings?
The drawings are part of being able to express the difference between current conditions and what the proposed project will do. And in my jurisdiction in Idaho here, there's only 12 things that you don't need a permit for. And those are all handyman related things like a fence or this or that flagpole. Everything else requires a permit. And to get a permit, you have to have a set of plans. And over the last couple of decades, the threshold for the quality of the plans has risen dramatically, which has been good for me and my industry, and kind of makes it difficult for a homeowner to get a permit. But it's a point of pride to be able to show somebody who's in the industry, like the plan checker, the difference between the existing and proposed. And then we have to communicate this with engineers. And as a professional, having sketched drawings, things not drawn professionally, is unacceptable. And so I would say 99% of the projects that I do require plans.
When you were introducing yourself, Joe, you said a word NARI. Can you just maybe what is that, and maybe just a few details about that?
So NARI is the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. It's a nationwide association of remodelers that's based in Chicago, and they're very the majority of the population, and therefore the majority of the members, are kind of from Chicago East. But I've been a member for many years, and contributing member. And when I was starting off in 2005, I felt that it would lend credibility to be associated with other remodelers. And so I joined. We had a local chapter, and it was full of people with a lot of experience, and they were all of a sudden mentoring me rather than being my competition. And rather than being siloed as a remodeler, I felt like I needed the association to bring immediate credibility. And it's been a wonderful thing. So that is an organization that's been around for a long time, and they have different certifications, some of which that I have and maintain. And I, in the last 3 years, began teaching other contractors, which has been really a joy for me.
So, you did highlight the part that you're an instructor or an advisor in this remodeling industry, and maybe that's local or regional. What does that mean for you? Like, how did you become an instructor, and what do you get out of it? What's that involved?
It was a real tough class. It was like 12, 13 years ago, when I had to have enough experience in the industry to be able to take the examination. And what I teach is a preparation class for contractors throughout the country to become able to take this test and pass, and they become a certified remodeler. That's the class I'm teaching. And it's all encompassing to the industry. In fact, I invited my students to participate in this webinar. I feel like it took 10 years of being certified and working in the industry to become a master certified remodeler, which I am, one of less than 100 in the nation. And it's a point of pride, and I feel like I'm giving back to my remodeling brothers and sisters around the country, and they are very appreciative of the knowledge and wisdom that I'm sharing. And so it's a point of pride. I look forward to doing it every year. I hope they continue to let me do it for the coming years.
Yeah, that's excellent. And the fact that you're an instructor just comes out of you, just your willingness to share and your willingness to educate. In our short time knowing each other, I've picked up some of the buzzwords like midway construction monitoring and design fatigue, and some of the topics that I want to highlight and double click on today. So again, I think that instructor element's really important, and just your willingness to share. So again, thank you for doing what you do that way.
You're welcome.
It's funny, we've only known each other, I think, since May, and all of our previous conversations have been somewhat technical related, right? Like how to get using the tech and this and that. And as I said to Charlene earlier today, I hadn't done a lot of prep for this because I wanted it to be a little bit organic and me learn about the business side of the remodeling and how you adopt technology and how that's changed your business. So I look forward to just a couple of the banters we're going to have back and forth. You mentioned about your students. When you're talking to new people in the remodeling industry and teaching your students, what pain points or challenges do you bring to light to them that they might not have visibility on? So like if they're coming into it or they're struggling, what are some of the pain points in the remodeling industry?
I feel like I understood more about that during my experience with Remodelers Advantage or roundtables, where 10 different owners of companies in non-competitive markets get together and really drill down to where the pain points are. And we look at each other's financials and we talk about processes and procedures. The students that I have we just don't get that intimate about their businesses, and I don't really understand their particular pain points because we have a lot of information to cover during the class. It's very structured. But to be honest, I think that the couple of different groups and roundtable groups I was in, there's a lot of commonalities between contractors. And I can assure you that the design process of a design build company is a lot of pain in the design process. I mean, the dream is to, after a first visit with a client, to encourage them to join into the design process, whether that's sold at the job site, which I don't particularly do, or whether it's, you come back to the office and put things together and make a presentation and have a second meeting with the client to try and encourage them to purchase, whether it's in person or online or email. And once you convince them that you're the right guy to design with, you need to have a process that is streamlined, and it's like a first date. You want to be polished in this process. And the primary pain, or one of the large pain points, is if you're not large enough to have a staff of draftsmen or architect on your team, you need to have relationships with third parties that can produce. And it is very difficult in this competitive market when people are busy to find that person who can draw for you consistently. And so I wanted to eliminate that person. That was the primary focus in how we ended up developing a relationship, early on, like 4 years ago. But design is certainly part of it. So there's many other aspects of, as a owner of a company, wear many hats. There's HR and there's all the production side of things. There's so many different dynamics, so many plates up in the air. But
I think one of the common themes about what you just answered about in regards to pain points is time. And I think the smaller the company, the more those, I don't want to say errors, but pain points become a major impact on your business if you don't get it right, and time can really mess up your projects.
Yeah, I think you mentioned design fatigue. Certainly, if we don't stay on schedule, if we've missed things, we need accuracy is so important. Time is, yes, the most valuable thing from a client's perspective and from my perspective, because time is money.
Right. Since you've started, to the point you're up to today, tell us the role of technology and the role of technology and onboarding technology at Levco from where you were to where you are today.
I like to say that we started off as a lemonade stand and now we're a real business, but I mean, we had, as a owner of a company with very few employees, I had to wear all the hats and do all the things. And it used to be that I would go to a job site for a client who agreed to do design. I was able to just draw and measure the local area, but now the city wants the whole building drawn, and it just added an incredible amount of time and energy and to things that I needed to do. Um, it was more than I could handle, and thankfully we grew through it. But technology, I mean, I think my biggest technology boost was in the early days was to get a point of sale system or a client portal. I happen to use Builder Trend, but there's many others out there that are fine. And that helped me organize myself and encouraged my employees to adopt the technology and the client facing sides of it. And that was just an enormous hurdle. I mean, when I started, cell phones weren't a thing, and digital photography wasn't there yet. And so I've kind of come through all of that. And so, I mean, the Planetar piece of it came at an interesting point in my life where we were an evolution of the business, where we were struggling to find a technology that would work. My brother is an architect and has taken over my father's business, as he's just turned 99. My dad, and he and I talk often, and technology seemed to be the only solution. I just didn't know which technology to use to kind of get me out of this constraint of design exhaustion.
And yeah, so you can see how, thank you for that. And you can see how there's various aspects, and as photography, as billing, as surveying systems change, that it's just really allowing you to do so many different things as a company and do more of those things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of technology and cool tools for a long time. I mean, I have a FLIR camera because I wanted to be able to see behind walls when it was necessary, and all sorts of other meters and things to diagnose issues with existing building conditions. But yeah, it's been technology. Although I struggle with it sometimes, I feel like I always find somebody or some way to get it to work for me instead of fear it.
Do you feel that it's been a slow adoption across the remodeling industry, onboarding new technology, or is it changing quickly now? Or how's the competitive landscape when you're competing with each other and other people have different, you've got different tools than other contractors?
I don't know if it was just me and I had an eye for it, or I could see the value in it immediately, but it was pretty instantaneous once I saw what it could do, that I adopted it. As far as I mean, I've done a virtual home tour for my remodeling association for 3 years in a row now. And I'm not sure if any of my competitors in the NARI world have had that aha moment like I did. But I think that I think that I was using your technology in a way that wasn't normal at the beginning. And I'm very excited to all of a sudden be recognized as a contractor, kind of leading the way into this technology, because I believe all I need to do is like talk to another contractor who is struggling with the same problem that I had, and to show them the ease and the, you know, the instantaneous aspects of it, that would just it'll take off in the remodeling industry once people understand what it is, whether they have third parties taking care of the photography for them, or whether they, like me, like to have the control of being able to use it frequently. And I remember just an anecdote popped in my head. Like, I was talking with the Planetar people very early on, and it was clear to me that I was using the technology in kind of in a different way. And we weren't really communicating that well because I wasn't a real estate photographer, and I wasn't a photographer at all. But within a couple of weeks, I was able to figure it out. And I feel like I've had a competitive edge. I call it my secret weapon, but I feel like I have a very competitive edge over my fellow remodelers in this industry, because I'm coming out and getting results fast.
So we had a question from the audience, and before we take a deeper dive into some of these subject areas, it was about Levco. And there's kind of three questions, and maybe there's one you don't want to answer, but they're asking about your company size. They were asking about if you do any engineering in-house, like structural, and how you tackle that. And then lastly, if you wanted to share your revenue model as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a fixed price lump sum contractor, so we are able to we start off with an opinion of cost for a client, no matter what the project is, after a personal evaluation that I do. And I take a moment to pause before I promise and give a realistic idea of cost after I've seen existing conditions. And so we're a fixed price lump sum contractor. So we need to estimate everything beforehand to provide and create a detailed set of plans and a extremely detailed description of work, along with having the client make all their selections of materials, finished materials, before we go into contract. And so ideally that process takes 90 to 120 days. I don't know where everyone else is at in this world. And yes, we've had some outliers that have taken a year to pick their stuff, but they exhaust us in most cases. So we're a 90 to 120 day design process. This year, we're going to be about a $2.5 million company, and we have 9 employees.
Wow, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing all of that. Just going to go into a couple of other little areas now. Over your time, how have the needs, demands, communication with the clients changed?
Oh my gosh. Well, COVID hit, and that caused, a bunch of changes in how we communicate. Things have kind of gotten back to normal. But communication wise, I mean, I'm fortunate in that I have grown my administrative team to 4. So I have an estimator, I have a office manager, myself, and I have a construction coordinator. She also does design and helps make the individual selections with the client. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess to kind of shift into that pre-construction sales kind of mode.
Sure.
If you're the client, you may be doing this with one or multiple contractors, correct? To see their spin on what you want to do in their space.
So a client, typical client will, either be referred or find me on Google or however they find me through my marketing, which is, not, I'm more of a guerrilla marketer and really try to dwell on my reputation when I arrive. And so a client might contact 2 or 3 contractors to get a feel for them and wait, and then we wait, or they make a decision immediately. But my decision tree, unless they put money in the machine, there's nothing that they get from me. Like, I don't solve all of their problems. I might come up with a clever idea or solution, or, ask questions that seem intriguing or show my enthusiasm for the particular project. But no one can know exactly what makes the client select me versus someone other than occasionally when I'm able to get an answer to that question, which was, and hopefully the last thing I want to hear is that you were the least expensive. I'm like, oh no, dear.
Yeah.
Like, I left something on the table. But, I explain early on that I show them a diagram of the steps. I have an organized process. It's not a meandering path. It's a step 1, step 2, step 3, and then ta-da, we present you with a contract. But during the course of the course of design and pre-construction, we do talk about price, because we don't want to wait to the end to do an unveiling. And we're constantly looking to see if somebody has changed their scope from the original assumption. So typically, we're in the 80% range when someone gets into design, unless something happens like a life crisis or who knows what, someone gets transferred or whatever. We have a pretty good success rate once they're in design to close the project.
That's a great segue into one of the terms that you've taught me about, and that's design fatigue. Can you talk about the client challenges and share how design fatigue can set in these kind of circular patterns when you're dealing with the clients?
Yes, we've design fatigue happens, or can happen, easily. I mean, I think of our communication patterns as like a ping pong game. You hit the ball over the net and they got to hit it back. And there has to be, if you hit the ball over and it never comes back, like send them an email or invite them to a meeting or something like that, and they don't respond, that could be a warning sign. Likewise, if they're emailing us or sending the ball over into our side over the net, we need to respond promptly. And so one of the things that, the other thing is, people could have challenges in making decisions, like, well, I don't know, I kind of like that tile, but this tile might be better. And then they have too much input from friends and family and they can't make a decision. That's a problem. So we look out for those things and we try to find out who's the decision maker, and if they're changing their mind frequently, or they decide after building this beautiful project on paper with plans and specifications, they can't afford it and want to pull things out. That's always a challenge. But design fatigue can happen on both sides of the net. You know what I mean? If we try to stay enthusiastic and energetic about things, and we limit the number of clients that we allow into design. That was at one point, we weren't charging enough, in my opinion, for design, the time it takes to design. And we had more desire, especially out of COVID, than we had the capability to stay excited about each and every client and their project. And so we instituted a thing called a holding pattern. Like, you can imagine airplanes in a holding pattern. Until we get somebody off the runway or project sold, we can't land you. And so clients have accepted that. Currently, we're not putting people in a holding pattern, and we have like 9 clients in design. and we're constantly checking their pulse to make sure that they are not fatigued. And we try not to accept clients into design when, like, the holidays are coming and I want to get my kitchen remodeled before Thanksgiving. We just tell them up front, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So we're trying to be more realistic about expectations, and not allow clients to go through the design process. We set the expectation early. This is a 90 to 120 day thing, and there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and we want to stay in front of this thing. So we need your attention, and we need you to participate in whatever it is that we're going to do for you.
Thanks, Joe. That's great, and it helps myself that doesn't have a construction background really understand a lot of things that go on at pre-construction. Can you maybe share your beginnings with iGuide, and then all the way up to how are you using the iGuides today to help you in pre-construction and creating a competitive advantage for yourself?
Okay, well, sure. I feel very fortunate that I kind of lucked into being steered in the right direction from an early date. So I knew that, and I was talking with my brother about getting photography done of a particular project where I was taking over for a contractor that had been fired. And that's always a yellow flag, danger, you're taking over for, why did they get fired? And I had heard a bunch of the stories. The client seemed reasonable to work with, but I had a project where this house was being held in the air, and excavation had been done for a prospective basement that was going to be, and there was an addition. It was quite a large project. A lot of demolition had been done, and I needed to accurately capture existing conditions, and thank goodness I did. But what I did was I called a local photographer who did real estate after speaking with my brother, who suggested we look into something. And so I contacted a real estate photographer, and I told him what it was and how important it was that I accurately document existing conditions. And that's all I thought I was going to use it for, honestly, just to document existing conditions from a legal standpoint. I'm taking over in the middle of something, and that's where my mind was at the time. And so,
do you mean the 3D kind of photos in terms of documentation, or the floor plan?
I needed photo documentations of existing conditions, and there were walls missing. This is a 1908-ish house, and a lot of stuff had been done, and I needed to be able to document the starting point. And it was a treacherous kind of situation. The house was being held in the air. It was a full thickness brick house in a very tight space, and the excavation was complete. And so I'm taking over something, and I needed to definitively determine what was there. And so it was either going to be 100 photographs, or when I mentioned to this particular photographer, he goes, well, I have a couple of systems I could use, but this one is the one you're going to want. And I go, interesting. So I let him drive, and he came out and we met, and I really didn't know what to expect. And he used he had an assistant that came with him, a teenager, and as I talked with him, he was reassuring me that he was going to capture everything to do with this building and existing conditions. And within 2 or 3 days, I think it was, I was given this amazing 360 of the existing house, all through the house, all around the house, and underneath the house. And I could zoom in it, zoom out. It was just exactly what I needed, because within a day of us starting the project, a wall collapsed, and I through no fault of our own, it was beginning of winter, and rain soaked the earth beneath the full thickness brick walls, and one wall collapsed, and I had documentation of what it looked like before we started the project. And I didn't look back. I mean, that was, once I saw what it was capable of doing, I immediately purchased my first camera.
So how, from that moment to your integration with, iGuides today within your company, maybe talk about how you approach projects. How do you use the iGuide system today in your business, and some of the benefits you've seen along the way?
So I'm the primary user of the tool. I'm happy to teach someone else how to use it in my organization, but I think part of it is that I make the initial presentation, or the initial meeting I have with the client, and I've developed the rapport. And so I come back, and once they're in the design process, I photograph existing conditions and capture existing conditions. And they see me come with this professional piece of equipment, a nice tripod, and my iPad, and I'm able to capture everything in within an hour. It's very efficient use of time. And then from there we have additional meetings, and I introduce my team at a subsequent, we call it a meet and measure visit, but I introduce my design team, my estimating team, and my production team, and we look at the house and kind of move forward with establishing a rapport with all these people that my homeowner will need to work with. And then within a day or so, I am sharing the results of my photography with the homeowner and my team. And so that locks in existing conditions, and it allows me to have a full set of scaled plans that I can then download into my drafting program. I use Chief Architect, and I have figured out how to import the DWG file. Before there was a DWG, I was still importing a file into my drafting program, but the DWG has given me another level of accuracy. And so that's where it starts. So I use it early on. It shows professionalism and accuracy. I'm able to create an existing set of floor plans within an hour or two of my receiving information, my iGuide back. So that's the first part. The second part is used in the design process, because when I invite my client in to draw on the big screen, proposed, I have iGuide on the other television monitor, so that we can quickly, the client is like not even remembering where things are in their house, and we show them right there. The iGuide's used heavily during the proposed drawing session that I have. And then it's further used during the design process, during estimating with requests for proposals. We can send the iGuide along. We have security, and it doesn't show the client's address. I mean, I can't get it off of Google, whatever. So I love that part of it. Took me a while to figure out that security part, but I do have all of my iGuides are secure, so the privacy is there. And then and so we can send iGuides out. We can refer to it regularly. It's decreased the number of visits we need to the house. And we can zoom in on little details, and it's extremely helpful in that regard. The next phase, I don't think I forgot anything there, but the next time we use it, I come out and photograph again at the midway, which is after we get our framing inspection, before insulation or drywall. we have a moment, we call it halftime during the middle of the project, where the client does a walkthrough and signs off that everything is right where they want it and we've laid it all out correctly. And then the final time I use it is during at the completion of a project, typically after the clients move back their stuff back in, and that would be the completion shot, and that would be the shot that I use for marketing purposes. It's I want to juxtapose it to the preliminary or the initial photography, so that I can share the aha moment of, you know, the excitement of being done with a project, and show what and it tells a story from the, you know, pain point of what was wrong with their house to the midway to where we're already got it torn apart and we're about putting it back together, and then the ta-da, we're done phase where and people can really understand. That's telling the whole story of the project.
Do you share the midway data with clients? Is there
It's
any value in that, or is that internal?
part of my the client portal allows me to put up as much information as I want. And so in the files back at home or back in the office, and it doesn't hurt a thing to put it up on the client portal. I think part of it, you know, it's hard to know exactly what clients do. Some are very excited about it and share it with loved ones across the country, you know, to want to know the progress of their project. I don't keep it secret in any way. It's available. And I remember early on that there were realtors that were complaining about how slow they were getting their results back from Planetar. And I'm like, what are you people talking about? This is the fastest turnaround time I could ever imagine. I used to have to wait weeks or months to get stuff back from a draftsman, and this is the like lightning fast. So sharing that information has helped me during production so much. So on their phone, my employee can pull up, you know, after the drywall's on, you can't see behind the walls, but we can with the iGuide. So we can pull it up on our phone or an iPad at the job site and know exactly what was there before it got covered up. So it's used heavily after the drywall is installed. And we've caught problems, we've found outlets, we've found backing, we've found you know, HVAC ducts that weren't connected, all kinds of things that are common mistakes. And I think we have this lightning fast ability to find out what's going on behind the walls. So sometimes called X-ray vision. I feel like we have that as our secret, another way we use our secret weapon to save time.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Do you have you been able to measure any quantifiable results on your investment in this tech? Like, do you say you're able to do 3 more projects a year, or I'm able to get my projects done X factor? Do you have any quantifiable stats of since you've started to use this technology?
That, I mean, I know that my entire team, you know, Cindy, my office manager, has been with me for 5 years, and we adopted the technology like 4 and maybe 4.5 years ago, maybe 4 right now. And so I know that, you know, as a bookkeeper and office manager, she has been able to see the dramatic changes from where we started and how we had the, you know, designers and draftsmen. We had like 5 of them that we would just parse these jobs out to, because we didn't want to overload any one of them. And the results were so different from all of them. And now I have control. So I think that my company has, over that period of time, I would say close to double in size and volume annually. in the last 5 years. And I think that it's all about eliminating constraints. And so the log jam was in the design process. We no longer have that as our log jam. If I wanted to grow the company, the processes that I have, I don't think would wear out for another $1 million in sales. And so I have the capacity to do more if I wanted to hire more in production. I'm content with the size of my company at the moment. I think the actual number of projects has decreased. This may surprise you, but I think that each one has grown. So as we get our processes and systems figured out, the trust factor goes up. And so we're doing more higher value cost projects with fewer clients. It's kind of a dream of mine to go in that direction. I think that's the path to success for me. And oddly enough, we're not a architect-fed company. I have not gone out to market to architects. And I like the niche that we have. So there you have it.
Joe, I think you've built a great business, and thank you for sharing your stories and your onboarding of our technology and the role that technology plays in your business going forward. It's been a real pleasure listening to your stories and your success as a remodeling company. That kind of concludes the formal part of our presentation, and we've got 13 minutes left, and I'm going to open up the floor to some questions from the audience, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
There are a couple of questions that came in, and I believe we've answered them as we've gone through it. There was one that came in that didn't come up about vertical measuring. Have you gone down that path at all about doing any vertical measurements?
I personally haven't gotten too involved in the measurement aspects of things. I have at my meet and measure, we do confirm some dimensions, like major dimensions of room sizes and altitudes of things, just to keep in the my estimator typically does that and puts it into words so that we have the notes from the meeting, but it's de-emphasized because of the accuracy that I'm drawing now. I think it's humorous to me that I feel like architects should be using this technology if they're not already, because we've gone into projects that have been drawn by architects that were wildly off in their dimensions, and mine are not. So I have become very trusting of what what's produced in an iGuide. And then my estimator does use the measuring tool quite a bit. I'm not sure exactly which ones he's using, but he does use them from time to time and finds them helpful. I have, constantly asked Planetar for feedback on my photography, my angles and how things are, stitching together. And I kind of learned over time some very basic rules about how to not or how to connect the dots very carefully while I'm taking shots. It's really not that hard. Process is really important to me. And so I shoot in a clockwise manner, exterior and interior. And I'm very careful about changing floors when I do that, and making sure the camera sees itself from other angles. So I feel like it really didn't take that much to learn how to use the tool correctly. With a little bit of feedback, I was able to be, extremely accurate, and therefore our measurements are accurate. And that tool, I think, is a wonderful tool to have, but I think it also needs to be, based in reality. I wouldn't, I think it's close. It's not exact, is what I have found, and close is what we use it for, and so it's a great tool.
So thanks for that. And for the person that entered the question about vertical measuring, you can touch base with me afterwards if you want some more information about that. Another question from the field was, what spacing between camera shots do you use? Example, so if you're going through a remodeling, we always say that shooting a property for real estate is very different than shooting it for construction or remodeling purposes. But how do you strategize your camera spacing when you're looking at a place for estimating purposes, let's say?
Oh, okay. Well, I would use the same technique on all projects, but so I start with a faraway shot of the front, and then I creep up into another one and another one. So I'm right up at the front door. I try to take 3 moving up forward, and then on every wall, depend on the exterior of a building, I want to have 3 shots that reflect each wall. So I'll start at a corner. I go clockwise, so I'd take a picture that shows both sides of the house at a corner, and then I do midway on the wall. Occasionally, if the wall is real long or I can't get back far enough, within 8 feet or so, then I'll take that. I may take a second on a side wall, and then I take the corner, and then I'll go onto the face of the next wall. That would be the C wall in my world. So I start with A wall, which is representing the front door. B wall would be the left. C wall is the rear wall, and the D wall. So I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least 10 shots of the exterior. And I'm always facing the camera at the building. And then I do one inside the front door and shoot back towards the entrance that I just walked through. And then I go around in a clockwise manner, making sure to catch everything. And depending on the importance of the room, I always aim my camera back to the shot, make sure I could see where the camera was in the last spot. And in rooms where I need higher detail, I might take 2 shots in that room. In kitchens, I do multiple shots around an island as an example. But I'm stitching it together, and I'm imagining what the end result, the product that I want. And I just make sure that I follow a couple of basic rules, which are, opening doors. I use an additional light that's an add-on feature that sits below my camera now to help me with illumination and good photography. And then I work my way around the house to make sure that I've captured every room and I think clearly about it. And then obviously change floors if necessary and do a similar thing, and making sure that I can see where I was in the last shot and kind of aim the camera in that direction. And
yeah, I think it's hard to answer, your max distance between shots, because I always say it always goes back to your relevant geometry. That if you're in a wide open room and you can get an accurate floor plan in 2 or 3 shots, then it's fine. But if you've got geometry that you're going to need to measure in post, then you've got to take a lot more consideration into your offset and your angles to that geometry. So basically the more the better, but within reason.
I always imagine the person drawing the fairies and elves, as I call them, who do the magic of turning the photography I did into a sensible drawing. I want to give them as much information as I possibly can without overloading them, so that they can do a good job and not say something like, "Hey, Joe, you missed a room. How am I supposed to do something with that?" So
yeah, I agree.
Very simple, straightforward approach.
So just 2 more. There was a question that came in. I'll answer that one. About the light that one of the lights is called a Halo 360 light. It's something that easily mounts between the tripod and the bottom of the Planix Pro camera. And it's just button operated, but it's fantastic for illuminating the scenes when you need to. Joe, what about Radix? Have you used Radix at all?
Oh, yeah. So Radix is a crazy cool tool that is used in certain circumstances. An example might be, I'm planning to put a building on this site, but there's nothing there to measure at this moment. And so I would do a radix of the area from all the different aspects I want to be able to look at it from. I imagine that I'm never going to be able to go back to that site again. And so I capture everything and use the radix feature for that. I also use the radix feature in the midway. That's when I'm using radix because I've already got a measured set of plans for the project. I don't need to remeasure, but I do need to see everything. So that's a cool feature that I use. And there's one more that I'm using it for. I'm trying to think. There was something that came up recently. On our the home tour for the remodeling association, you're welcome to look at it. It's the Boise NARI remodeled homes tour. There's a link to quite a few that I've taken there, but there was one in particular where it was an outdoor space. They had adjacent to a pool, put in an island with cooking, outdoor kitchen, and Radix seemed to capture everything that I needed. It was a post-production imagery and no plans were needed. And so that was a fine way of using the Radix. But those are a couple of times when I use it, and extremely, you just have to not need a set of plans. And so you get your photography back and no measurements, and it's extremely quick and perfect for it's just one more, it's like another arrow in my quiver. It's just a cool thing to keep in mind. Not used for everything, but certainly wonderful for what it's designed to do.
Joe, one more question came in, but we're going to have to keep it short. And I just wanted to ask, when you share properties, do you ever share them with subcontractors to kind of give them a scope of what they're going to be walking into?
I use it. I take snapshots so I can do a screenshot of a particular thing to send to anybody. And I can also send the whole thing and then walk through it with them. So I could tell a client to go into this room, or I could tell the subtrade partner to go into this room and look in this direction, and then they could see what it is that we're going to do. So yes, it's extremely helpful for that. And nothing embarrassing about sending that information to a subtrade partner. Very helpful.
Joe, thank you very much. It's been really interesting and knowledgeable for me to learn your business side of things, your success with the product. And thank you so much for sharing it. So thank you to you for joining us today and sharing all that. And I think your instructor has come out of you and your willingness to share.
It's natural.
Your willingness to share, and you articulate your business space very easily. And thank you for that. I'd like to thank all of the attendees for joining. I hope you got something out of it like we have. We've recorded this, so it will be available through a couple of social media channels. I'd also like to just thank the Planetar marketing team for all their work in putting this together. And we look forward to continuing this series and interviewing our clients and educating the spaces of all the different ways to use our technology. So once again, Joe, thank you very much. We'll end it there. And thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be in touch real soon. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.